Hello, boys, girls, and fellow intellectuals. This is Reason, that voice in your head you should listen to. And today we're going over a Forbes article. And I know what you're thinking, but no, it's not PC bullshit. In fact, it's actually on Anarcho-Capitalism. Before we start, though, I thought I should let you know that I'm going to be making another Q&A soon. So if you want your questions featured, post them in the comments or tweet them to me with the hashtag ReasonsQA. Now, on to the main event. Sorry, libertarian anarchist, capitalism requires a state. Okay, is it me, or does that title itself poison the well? As it says next to my picture, I defend laissez-faire capitalism. Oh really? The title sounds like you think otherwise. Anti-government is the term leftists use to smear this position, and amazingly, some calling themselves libertarians are indeed anti-government across the board. They argue for what they call anarcho-capitalism. Alright, let me point something out real quick. Leftists, a majority of the time, they advocate for social policies. As for libertarians, we don't advocate for any use of the government power, seeing as the government initiates force, and the initiation of force cannot be logically justified. So to hold a position in support of doing so is, in its own sense, dogmatic, illogical, and unreasonable. To put it in simple terms, we're on our own side. Free competition works so well for everything else, these anarchists say. Why not for governmental services too? I feel a Strawman coming, but that argument comes from an anti-capitalist premise. No, it does actually. The fact is, Harry, that we believe that all the services that the government provides by stealing from you can be done more effectively and at a lower cost by the private sector. And guess what the best part is? You get to choose what you pay for, unlike with taxes, where you don't get to choose what you fund. Like the Marxists who prayed about exploitation and wage slavery, the anarchists are ignoring the crucial fundamental life and death difference between trade and force. Marxists claim that capitalistic acts use force. Anarcho-capitalists claim that acts of force can be capitalistic. Again, seriously, no, we don't believe in the initiation of force. We believe in equalizing that which the initiation of force destabilizes, meaning if someone attempts to kill you, in turn, you have the right to defend yourself and, if necessary, kill the person who is initiating force. Then again, basic research of the non-aggression principle would have told you that. Though they come at it from different directions, both ignore or evade the fact that producing and exchanging values is the opposite of physical force. When you say values, do you mean ideas? I don't see what you're getting at. Also, we ANCAPs know exactly what the use of force or coercion is, so don't rope us in with the comrades. Production is the creation of value, and trade is the voluntary exchange of value for value to mutual benefit. No, actually, production is the creation of a commodity, good, or service. When you use value in that sense, it makes you come off a bit like a Marxist. Force is destruction, or the threat of it. It may be the destruction of a value, as when a hoodlum throws a rock through a store window, or it may be the destruction of destruction, as when a policeman pulls a gun on the hoodlum and hauls him off to jail. But in either case, it is the opposite of wealth creation and voluntary trade. Actually, the opposite of wealth creation is, or would be, frivolous spending, and the opposite of voluntary trade is involuntary trade, which is what you have in relation to the state. Force properly employed is used only in retaliation, but even when retaliatory, force merely eliminates a negative. It cannot create value. The threat of force is used to make someone obey, to thwart his will. The only moral use of force is in self-defense, to protect one's rights. Okay, you're confusing morality with logic, one being subjective and the other being objective. It is illogical to initiate force against someone because you are essentially claiming the right to rule over them, which violates their right to self-ownership, which is illogical, seeing as in order for you to own them, you would have to have the right to self-ownership. So if they don't have that same right, then you're violating the consistency principle and the law of non-contradiction, as you would have to own yourself to own property. It is only as retaliation that force may be used, and only against the man who starts its use. No, I do not share his evil, or sink to his concept of morality. I merely grant him his choice, destruction, the only destruction he had the right to choose, his own. He uses force to seize a value. I use it only to destroy destruction. A hold-up man seeks to gain wealth by killing me. I do not grow richer by killing a hold-up man. The wielding of force is not a business function. In fact, force is outside of the realm of economics. Economics concerns production and trade, not destruction and seizure. Well, if you want to talk about wielding force as a business function, there are private contractors who use defensive force to secure what they have been hired to protect, meaning no initiation of force, only defensive force. So there is a market for the use of force in a defensive manner. Keep that in mind as we go on. Ask yourself what it means to have competition in governmental services. It's a competition in wielding force, a competition in subjugating others, a competition in making people obey commands. That's not competition. It's violent conflict on a large scale. It's war.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break. Just shut your pie hole, for goodness sake.
Okay, I'm obviously going to have to spoon feed you this, seeing as you've just built yourself a nice big strawman argument for yourself. When we say we want competition for services provided by the government, we mean everything from healthcare to military. Now, that last part was fear-mongering, as these competitors would have to adhere to the natural law in the form of the non-aggression principle, meaning these private militaries and private police forces are not allowed to initiate force. Now, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't be allowed to intervene if someone is initiating force. On the contrary, that would be their job. So, no, it's not a pissing contest of who can more effectively subjugate people. It's competition in the sense of who can provide the best service at the lowest cost. The shootout at the OK Corral was not a case of competition. Actual competition is a peaceful rivalry to gain dollars. Dollars paid voluntarily in uncoerced trade. The OK Corral shootout was a shootout between outlaws and officers, not private military versus private military. And that was a little more than 135 years ago. So that's a false equivalence. Other than that, I don't see an issue with that last statement. Governments are necessary because we need to be secure from force initiated by criminals, terrorists, and foreign invaders. Objectively false. See, the issue with that statement is that thus far the private sector is able to outperform the state in every way. Take, for instance, SEAL security.
It's crimes like that have neighbors in Sharpstown looking for protection, but not from police. They found another way to cut crime, and it is working. Brad Woodard has their solution in a story you'll see only on KHOU 11 News.
Show me 1041 Sharpstown Sector 3.
As Officer Leroy Bill patrols the streets for the Sharpstown Civic Association.
We're looking for broke windows. We're looking for kicked-in doors.
He looks and sounds like a cop.
At least it's quiet today.
And he and his fellow officers are certainly armed like cops, complete with canines. And when most people hear private security, what do they think?
They think mall cop.
No mall cops here. They are security officers with SEAL security, and they've been under contract with the subdivision since November.
We actually patrol districts and subdivisions like this one, give them a little bit more security for their money.
The Civic Association used to contract with the constable's office for a deputy to patrol the area. But now that it's gone with SEAL security, it has anywhere from 3 to 4 officers patrolling the streets at any given time and at half the cost. Also cut in half, the number of burglaries. The average monthly number last year.
At about 20 per month.
And in February?
11.
Wow.
So a big change.
And yes, I know they're not a business, but even 4chan outperforms the NSA.
As many may know, Anonymous is a worldwide hacker group that originated and continues to be heavily connected to 4chan. While the group has gone after a lot of people and organizations over the years that they felt were trying to limit online freedom and privacy, it wasn't until 2014 that they set their eyes on their biggest target yet, ISIS. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or ISIS for short, is a group of radical Muslims all across the world that want to spread their beliefs through the most atrocious of ways. And this group has grown in power at a frightening pace, especially in the Middle East where they have taken over large parts of countries. With the list of crimes they've committed, including torture, mutilation, rape, and murder, Anonymous felt that they should focus on fighting ISIS through the power of the internet. To date, they have successfully shut down over 800 Twitter accounts, 1,000 websites, and 50 emails that were all traced back to the extremist group.
Not only are they more efficient, but they are a fraction of the cost. So, Harry, why do you say that you defend laissez-faire capitalism when most of what you say is either statist criticisms that are based off of ignorance of anarcho-capitalism and use grammar that comes off borderline socialist? You're really sending a lot of mixed signals, and I'm starting to think that you're not what you say you are. But let's continue. The genius of the American system is that it is limited government. reining it in by a constitution with checks and balances and the provision that no law can be passed unless it is necessary and proper to the government's sole purpose, to protect individual rights, to protect them against their violation by physical force. Actually, it's not genius, seeing as it passes nearly 100,000 pages of new regulations on businesses a year that show competition, which, by the way, is corporatism, seeing as officials are lobbied by large corporations to implement said regulations to gain an unfair advantage in the market using the power of the state. By the way, I'm using your website's own statistics here, so there's a little insult to injury. Also, those checks and balances don't mean shit, seeing as the president can push a law through using affirmative action. Also, on that bit about protecting individual rights, if they really want to protect individual rights, why do they throw us in cages for smoking a harmless leaf, and are constantly chipping away at our rights to own firearms? If you ask me, it seems like you haven't done enough research on the shit that you're writing about. Tragically, the original American theory of government was breached, shelved, trashed long ago, but that's another story. No, not really, seeing as the government you're praising is the one that trashed the idea of government that the Founding Fathers imagined. Still, nonetheless, government initiates force, and you're advocating for a state. Just shows how you're lying about your stance on laissez-faire capitalism. The anarchists do not object to retaliatory force, only to it being wielded by a government. Why? Because they say it excludes competitors. It sure does. It excludes vigilantes, lynch mobs, terrorists, and anyone else wanting to use force objectively. No, actually, it's not that they exclude competitors, it's because it initiates force. That's why we have a problem with the government. But then again, if you were an advocate for anarcho-capitalism or laissez-faire capitalism, then you would have known that, wouldn't you? Also, when we say competitors, it's in the sense of government services. We mean everything from healthcare to military, not those who would violate the NAP, like those you just mentioned. A government is the means of placing the retaliatory use of physical force under objective control, i.e. under objectively defined laws. In Rand, capitalism, the unknown ideal. There can be only one supreme law of the land, and only one government to enforce it. State and local governments are necessarily subordinate to the federal government. See, the issue with this statement is there is a natural law. Natural law is what the NAP is derived from. It protects your natural rights. Natural rights exist in a negative context, meaning they require no action to obtain and hold, and require an initiation of force to deprive you of that right. The rest of the article is him appealing to authority in the form of status bootlicking and going on about government in a way that doesn't properly represent anarcho-capitalism. If you enjoyed the video, please like and share, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Remember to leave any questions you have for the Q&A in the comments below, or tweet them at me with the hashtag #ReasonsQ&A. I'll be leaving my own question to you all down below. So remember, stay reasonable, and that when you lie, we can all see the brown behind your ears.